makeup basically is of the red wolf, right? Supposedly, it's supposedly a mixture of like coyotes or a crossing of coyotes and gray wolves.
Okay.
From eons ago.
Yeah.
Whether that, it's been genetically linked to that supposedly by some biologists.
Very cool.
So you really feel like there's Sasquatches in this area, and certainly in Mississippi.
Certainly in Mississippi.
I'm just really surprised at the lack of reports. This looks like a great area for them, and you go up to northwest Louisiana, Cattle Lake and Sulphur River bottoms, anywhere in there, every county has 10 to 12 reports, 10 to 15 reports in it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a lack of population. Why do you think there are so few reports in this area?
Well, I think that part of it is the lack of population, and the other is, it kind of goes hand in hand with that, but the population of people that's here, are just not people who go around reporting things to officials. They're not going to get on the internet and look up Sasquatch reports, or where can I report this sighting to the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization or the BFRO or something like that. You have people who grew up, and if they see something, it's like, oh, that's that swamp booger Grandpa told us about from way back when, or whatever.
It's not a big surprise to them.
Right,
Yeah.
It's nothing new. These people have gone around coon hunting all their lives. They see weird stuff in the woods. They shine eyes all the time, and it's just no big deal, to most of them. They've lived in these woods hunting and all their lives.
So they just kind of accept it as a possibility and don't really look beyond that.
Right, and they don't want a bunch of people coming in here on their stuff, in their areas.
Right.
Greene County, which is we're in the edge of Greene County here, but is similar, outside the forest. And it's one of the poorest counties in the state, but you have a lot of big landholders there. It's just family land. That people that own hundreds of acres and thousands of acres. It also is one of the biggest producers of meth and stuff like that in the entire state. So you have people that don't want you coming in, in those areas. We don't want anybody snooping around here.
You ever come across any clandestine stills or things like that?
I have.
Yeah.
In Greene County, I was surveying a piece of property. That was one of the bigger pieces, and we were dividing it up amongst the heirs. And there was an old pond, an old lake. I don't know how long it had been built, how long ago it was built, but the spillway was blown out. And we were coming up through, crossing a creek that came out the spillway, and we found a homemade, like a mill wheel, that was part of a steel.
Okay.
And if I had a way to get just that mill wheel out of the woods, because it was awesome, it was cool, and they'd let us have it. The people would, they were nice, but it was the older people, the grandparents who had the steel and all that. So it was 80 years old probably, and I found newer ones, inside of a washing machine with the little glass jugs hanging on the side of it, and all the cooking stuff there,
Oh, wow.
And I found a few meth labs and 2 pot fields.
Oh, really?
That would definitely explain why they're keeping to themselves. For sure.
But,
are there any structures or anything around here that you think we could find and check out? Any old homesteads or any properties you know of that have
or anything interesting
structures that might be
anything
just interesting?
Yeah.
And what I'm going to actually do is pick up this camera and get different angles of us talking. Just
absolutely.
The guy who's going to cut it for us wants different viewpoints.
Right.
But that's one of the things we want to get on camera is just different cool things. In where we were, there were these 3 huge pipes that went under the road, and the floodplain you could see had pushed debris up against them, but we were able to walk up to them, and they just gave a neat feel. We actually were able to walk through them.
Sure. I know of one, old homestead. There's no road
Just pop some
currently going into it. I ran the lines around it back in the 90s. And there was a lady living in there at the time. She was very old. Her husband had passed away. And gosh, she was 80 some odd years old. And she said if she wasn't feeling bad that morning, she would have helped us go in there and run the lines. Obviously, you know, there's no way I would have let her do it.
Right.
I looked at it on the aerial photographs and I could not see any signs of the old house. When I talked to the Forest Service workers at the workstation when we were doing the lines in here, none of the guys who were currently employed except for one knew about the existence of that private piece of land in the forest.
Really?
They had to ask around, and then that one guy, he'd been here for a good while, he said, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that piece of land. But there was no road going into it anymore. It had just been closed down. And
So
they
how did
said,
she get out?
well, she passed away, and when she passed away, they didn't use the road anymore.
Oh, okay.
Now part of the horse trail comes in and goes near the property, and it's a little over 40 acres, and you can see it on the Forest Service map. You know, it's a white piece of land surrounded by green. You know, it's a private piece of property.
So she just
It's
stayed
still
back there by herself? I mean, there was no... did she-
It's owned
I assume
by.
she didn't drive, but did she have somebody coming to care for her or anything? Or?
She drove. She
Oh,
still
wow.
drove. She
Okay.
had a vehicle back then.
Okay.
Well, like I said, I could not see a building on the aerial photograph when I looked earlier this week. But, you know, if it's, maybe there was just some canopy over it when the photo was taken.
Right.
Or perhaps they tore it down after she passed away. It's owned by, I assume, her daughters. It had their names and addresses.
This was on private property, though?
Correct.
Yeah.
The Forest Service is right there around it, you know, all the way around. I mean, she had mostly fields, and the back end of it there was a little creek running through, and that was the only part that was wooded at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's grown up since then. You know, it's been 16 years now, so, since I've been in there.
Wow. And whereabouts was this?
It's close to, well, the horse trail comes through there, but it's close to this road that the camp's on. It's
Okay.
a long leaf.
Okay,
Campus
so
on.
that's where, okay. Wow.
You're looking at the map, that's probably a good 30, 35 minutes drive from
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Yep. You know, I know a lot of places that are on private land, you know, that I've seen going through here. Some of them really cool. We'd stop and take pictures as we were going through and all. You know, the Forest Service, most of the stuff that was on the Forest Service land, you know, obviously over the years, it's been taken down or, you know, has rotted away.
Right.
You know, because they got the land so early in the 20th century. You know, and obviously they weren't, you know, they're not going to take care of something that's, you know, just in the way.
Yeah.
That place that you told us about, where you found like a row of trees that had been snapped off at a certain level, like a really long,
Right. That's in,
several hundred yards or
I believe that's in the Mulberry Quad.
Mulberry. Okay.
believe it is,
So
yeah.
what county is that? Is that Mulberry County or?
No. It's in Jones.
In Jones,
You're just Jones, Wayne, and Green right here. They just what they did is they named the quads after a community that was in the area there, or just maybe if there's no community, someone who lived there or some natural feature within it.
So was it all pine that was snapped off, or what?
No,
What
no,
did you
no.
see?
It would be like myrtle, oak, and stuff like that.
Okay, so it wasn't just soft pine. It was.
No. And what these were the trees were taller than that, and there were just limbs coming off the trees,
Right.
about 8 to 15 feet high.
So it's like they've been topped off.
No. The trees would be much taller. They'd be 20 or 30 feet high.
Okay.
But the limbs that came out off of them and hung over the trail were broken off.
So it looked like somebody had come along and just.
broke them,
broke
reached
them
up and grabbed
yeah.
them and broke them. They were far enough out on the limb that nobody, well, even someone Abigail's size, could not have crawled out on the limb and broke them because the limb would have.
So it wasn't like
Fallen.
storm damage, like an ice storm or heavy wind or anything.
No.
like
Well,
that?
nothing else was broken around there.
Okay.
That's what was weird about it.
And was
you
it
know.
like in a straight line, or was it just like in a spread out area in a given
No,
area?
it was like going down the trail. And it wasn't every limb, but it was just, you know, every few limbs was broken
It
like
just
that.
seemed odd because it was very noticeable that it was
Right.
in a pattern. So.
Right. And just a certain stretch of the trail, there was nothing before it or after it that was broken like that. It was really weird.
Have you ever seen anything like that before or since? You had several people with you that witnessed
I
that
had one
also?
person with me, guy that was helping me with it.
Had he ever
that
seen
day.
anything like that before?
No. No. Not the strangest thing I've seen in the woods surveying, but it was pretty weird.
What was the strangest thing?
Well, in Stone County, my guys were going surveying a section line. They were way back in the woods. I mean, no reason for any other person to be there. And we were surveying, the guy we were surveying for owned all the land around. And the timber there was not big. It was not mature timber like this. You know, it was fairly close together. They crossed a creek, came up on the other side of the creek, and it was a small creek. They were still within the floodplain, so all the trees in there were hardwood trees. And they were pretty small. They were anywhere from 3 to 6 or 8 inches in diameter. They got into an area maybe 30 feet from the creek, maybe 40. And that kind of cleared out, and there were still those little small trees in there, and about 30 or 40 of them maybe were stripped of bark from ground level up to about 8 feet, completely stripped. But the trees were still alive, so it hadn't happened long enough ago for the trees to die, you know.
Right.
But they were completely stripped, and the bark that was removed was not laying around on the ground. It had been taken somewhere else.
Interesting.
Very strange. I don't know any
Was
animal.
the land cleared around these trees at
No,
all?
no.
or-
This is in the middle of the woods.
I know, but was it like, I don't know, like
No,
a
no.
pathway, like it had been traveled, or?
No.
Okay.
There's leaves and stuff like that on the ground.
Huh.
I've never seen anything like it.
And what kind of trees were these?
Little hardwoods like oak,
Okay.
water oak, that type
And
stuff.
that's
and
not normal for those kind of trees just to shed their bark like
No,
that?
they don't shed their bark at all.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, they have very smooth bark and hard bark. They did not think that I would believe them, so they cut about 8 of them down, and then they cut, the tops off of them naturally because they wouldn't fit in the truck.
Were they
And they
analyzed
brought
to see
them
what
back.
was wrong with them or anything?
No, well, there was no disease or anything. I mean, it was just peeled off. The bark peeled clean off. And they brought them back, and I looked at them, and legitimately, it looked like something had scraped the bark off.
That's really
of it.
interesting that the bark wasn't on the ground, because
Very.
I've come across that before, where I've seen where strips of bark, because some animals, take the bark off. Bears will do it, and I think, I don't know, do deer do that too? They
No.
rub it off?
Well, they just,
Yeah,
rub
but
it,
it's just
but you
places,
can
and you
see,
still
yeah.
see where it's come off the tree.
Right.
Yeah, and then I guess certain diseases, the trees make their bark strip off too, right?
But
But usually it
they'll
deteriorates.
die. The
yeah,
tree
just-
dies, and
yeah.
then the bark will kind of
Yeah, but
pop
you've
off.
seen it, and I've seen it where it's just been strips, pulled off the tree,
Yeah.
and then it's nowhere on the ground. And there's other trees like it around, and there's nothing wrong with them. And it doesn't appear
Yeah.
to be a diseased tree, but it's
No,
kinda
these
odd.
are healthy as they could be from the way they appeared. But like I said, it was just no bark anywhere, all the way around the tree, up to around 8 feet, give or
Right.
take.
So how long have you been doing Forest Service? Been involved in that? How'd you get started in it?
When I got out of college at Mississippi State, the first job that I took was working for a surveyor out of Jackson, Mississippi. Who
What year was
had-
that?
1996, right? 1996.
Okay.
And that
The
surveyor.
year she was born.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my son was born in '95.
Okay. And he had a contract with the Forest Service to remark and resurvey their boundary lines or whatever for all the national forests in the state except for the 2 northernmost forests.
Okay.
And so I did all of them. Then I worked for an engineering firm after that. Then I worked for an engineering firm for 4 years. I became licensed, and then just did private surveying all over the south part of the state and Forest Service contract work doing the same things. Redoing their boundary lines and whatnot. So I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of these big big tracts. I also, International Paper sold 30,000 acres in Stone, George, and Harrison and Jackson counties, and I surveyed most of it when they broke it off and sold it to different people.
Okay.
Now, you said that the bark being off the trees was the weirdest thing you saw in that particular county. Is there something weird you saw in another county?
No, that pretty well takes the cake as far as things that I could
Just
not
couldn't explain.
explain at all. Yeah. Like
Have you ever felt uncomfortable? You said you do this a lot by yourself. Have you ever felt uncomfortable by yourself out there?
Not in the sense like something's watching me and
Right.
it might get me or something like that. I'm pretty sure of myself, but I always have
I was gonna say, are you armed or protected?
Yeah.
In some way? Yeah.
I always have a machete no matter what with me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll carry a pistol.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, well, I had a .357 Magnum. I traded it in for something a little bigger, but
Bigger?
yeah. Well, I was going to go up to the Pacific Northwest to do a little investigating, so I wanted something that would probably put a bear down if it charged. I didn't want to let it get into pepper spray range, so
Right.
I went for the 44 mag.
Well, that ought to slow it down.
Yeah, if you can get it out in time. That thing is huge. But I was telling Rob, in that vicinity of where my guys found those stripped trees, which was in the edge of Stone County, there's Forest Service land right there joining it. One of the workers, who I can't readily identify, said that while cruising some timber there, this is in 2002, that they ran across an area where that several dogs had been killed and partially eaten or mostly eaten. And they found some really strange tracks there that looked kind of like maybe human tracks, but not exactly. And you
Did
didn't
they
go
take
into,
measurements of the tracks at all?
Yeah, but I couldn't get them.
Okay.
I couldn't get the photographs of them
Do you know
either.
if they made any kind of casts of them?
He said that they contacted the anthropology department at USM, and someone came down and looked at them, and said that they appeared to be primate tracks. Not exactly human, but something
Give
close.
any indication of the size at all?
Nope. He said they were told not to ever talk about it again. They were given a memo.
Do you think that was because they didn't want anybody to be afraid of the land because they're trying to sell the timber, or?
Well, I don't know. He said they roped it off for a while and did not proceed with the sale. But now the timber has been cut. And at this point, this was 2002, so it's already been replanted and everything now.
Right.
So it's been cut and replanted.
Knowing that industry, would a potential discovery like that, or somebody coming forward and publicly saying that there was, some sort of unknown primate walking the lands, do you think that would be damaging to the industry at all?
I don't think so, no. I've seen people write things like that on the internet and saying how, the discovery of something like a Sasquatch would shut the timber industry down. Hey, that's bunk, period. Because
you don't think that animal rights advocates would try to?
Animal rights activists might try to do something, but it has no weight. There's nothing there. There are no studies to show, first of all, that there is a Sasquatch. Well, now we believe that there is, but there are certainly no studies to show that that the timber industry has any effect whatsoever on the animals,
On their habitat.
habitat and on their ability to survive.
Yeah.
If they are here, the South is one of the biggest timber regions in the entire country, and timber harvest has been going on here since the 1800s. Well, even back then they didn't replant. Now we're in a system where we cut timber on rotation, cut so many acres here, so many there, and then we're replanting it. And this has been going on successfully since at least the mid-1900s. And if we're still having Sasquatches here or whatever, they're obviously not impacted too badly by it. So,
So you don't really think that
it'd be
has any
really
weight on it?
no, I don't. Not at all. Not at all. If you have something, even with the spotted owls up in the Pacific Northwest, that issue came up, and there were, nature rights people, animal rights people, I'm sorry,
Right.
you know, basically said that these owls are going to go extinct if you cut this big old growth timber. And they cut it. Well, they cut a lot of it.
Right.
I mean, President Bush at the time said, you know, the lives of these loggers are more important than our children seeing the spotted owls. But you know what? The spotted owls came back. They didn't go extinct. And actually, I read a paper this past year that talked about the implications of the timber harvest on the rebound of the spotted owls. And they've actually increased because there was an increase in the animals that the spotted owls fed on. When the underbrush and stuff, when you cut the timber, the sunlight gets down to the smaller vegetation, the underbrush and whatnot, it grows back thicker, and you have more rodents and more things that the owls eat.
Right.
And so
So it's actually
the population
beneficial to
actually
them.
beneficial, yeah.
Interesting.
Same thing here. You know, when you get, every time you have a clear cut, you get the young tender shoots coming back. That's a salad bar for deer. And then anything, and rabbits and whatnot, anything that preys on those benefits because the deer population increases. So if you have something like Sasquatch, if they prey on deer or rabbits, you know, it's a boom for them.
Right.
And when the growth gets even bigger than that, you got a lot of thickets that they can hide in.
Right.
So I just don't, you know, I don't see any ill effects whatsoever with timber.
Well, that's interesting because I've never heard anybody's stance that, you know, that works in this industry